IUIC misinterprets Revelation chapter 9. Yeah, what's going on, part of people? The place to be. I go by the name of the BK Apologist, transmitting all the way live. New York is the city, Brooklyn is the borough. What's good? What's popping? Hope everybody's doing well. We here. Um, we got Tyler Lott. We got Elite Gift 7. What up? What up? Thank you for being here. If you have not yet already, please like, share, and subscribe. Tell a friend that it's him again. Please share this link. We're shooting for 6K subs before year's end. And that can only happen if my street team, which is you guys in the chat, go and spread the word. And if you like how it goes down with BK, you can show your appreciation throwing some digital coinage via the PayPal link that's in the top of the chat. Or you could become a monthly supporter of BK, where you get an assortment of goodies to enhance your personal Bible study. That is correct. That is right. So Adrian Jones in the building. Man, it's good to see you guys, man. Good to see you guys here. So, as always, we always are trying to find ways to equip the saints to defend the faith, because we know that there are organizations that are very well organized and disciplined and trying to take people out of the faith, out of the gospel of Jesus. And one of these groups is IUIC, right? And they want to get you out of the gospel. They claim that they have the gospel, but if you take any time to listen to their doctrine, it's clear that that's not the case. I hate to say it, but they are enemies of the cross. They just are. But because, they are so well organized in their conveying of their heresy, many people can be beguiled based off the aesthetics and the power and the slick production of what they do. So we always want to take time out to really showcase how poorly they understand scripture. And I don't mean to say that in a condescending manner, but it is what it is. It's the case. They constantly misinterpret scripture. And this is yet another episode where we're going to look at how IUIC misinterprets and eisegetes passages of scripture. So now the one thing I will say though, when it comes to misinterpreting Revelation, the Hebrew Israelites don't corner the market when it comes to that, right? Many well-meaning Christians also misinterpret Revelation. They also read things into Revelation. And in fact, what we're going to look at today, this clip, they're doing a lot of things that we've heard other Christians say. So this is not just a correction of IUIC, but also to many Christians as well. Okay, so with that being said, let's look at this clip and we'll break it down from there. So
this happened World War I and World War II. This is what this vision is talking about. But I want to bring your attention again. Remember, I'm talking about the technology shift, right? Things that they saw that they had no frame of reference for, and they had to describe the best they could. Right? Go ahead, come on.
And there arose a smoke out of the pit, as the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened by reason of the smoke of the pit.
Come on.
And there came out of the smoke locusts upon the earth.
Come on. So he called them locusts, right? Go ahead, come on.
And unto them was given power, as the scorpions of the earth have power.
Right. Wow. So he says So now you're looking at this and you're thinking a fairy tale.
Or
And now I'm going to start to explain to you what it's talking about. Go ahead, come on.
And the shapes of the locusts were like unto horses prepared unto battle.
So he's explained. Now he goes back to explain these locusts. So you don't think it's some weird Dungeons and Dragons monster, right? Go ahead, come on.
And on their heads were as it were crowns like gold. And their faces were as the faces of men.
You see the cockpits on the plane? Right. So what he saw was something flying, swarms of it, right? And the buzzing of the engines,
right?
And it says the face of men, right? In the cockpit, you have men flying them, right? So you see their face in those older style planes. So he's talking about that technology. Now it's evolved, right? But he's saying what he saw then, right? Go ahead, come on, keep reading.
And they had hair as the hair of women. And their teeth were as the teeth of lions.
Right. So we can read it here. The tails, what says hair like women, the planes leave what when they're flying? Like the chemtrail, like the little chemtrail behind it, right? Like wisp of hair and stuff like that, right? And then it says also you got helicopters and things like that, right? All those type of visuals that they have. And then it says what? The teeth as the teeth of what?
And their teeth were as the teeth of lions.
Put up that other one. That's the picture there. This happened World War I and World War II. This is what this vision.
All right, so this is how they're breaking down. Yeah, I mean, that's like nah. What? Did he just say Revelation was talking about war? Yes, you heard correctly, Elite. You heard correctly. Yeah, it's wild. But listen. Right? It ain't just a bruise. We've heard well-meaning Christians also do stuff like this to scripture as well. All right, so we can't put it on just these guys, even though we are focusing on these guys. It's also for other Christians as well. Right? So he says, quote, this happened during World War I and World War II. This is what this vision is talking about. But I want to bring your attention again. Remember, I'm talking about the technology shift. Things that they saw that they had no frame of reference for. I want you to remember that. And they had to describe the best they could. So John the Revelator, according to how he's interpreting this, John the Revelator saw these things. And it was actual World War I and II planes. But because, he's never seen such technology, he described it the best he could. So in his mind, in his way of trying to understand what he's seeing, these are like locusts, right? This is what he's saying. So let's look at the chapter, right? And we're going to take it from there, right? So Revelation 9, starting in verse 1. And the fifth angel blew his trumpet, and I saw a star falling from heaven to earth. And he was given the key to the shaft of the bottomless pit. He opened the shaft of the bottomless pit, and from the shaft rose smoke like the smoke of a great furnace. And the sun and the air were darkened with the smoke from the shaft. Then from the smoke came locusts on the earth, and they were given power like the power of scorpions of the earth. They were told not to harm the grass or the earth or any green plant or any tree, but only those who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads. They were allowed to torment them for 5 months, but not to kill them. All right, I want you to keep that in the back of your head. Not to kill them. And their torment was like the torment of a scorpion when it stings someone. In those days, people will seek death and will not find it. They will long to die, but death will flee from them. In appearance, the locusts were like horses prepared for battle. On their heads were what looked like crowns of gold. Their faces were like human faces. Their hair like women's hair, and their teeth like lions' teeth. They had breastplates like breastplates of iron, and the noise of their wings were like the noise of many chariots with horses rushing into battle. They have tails and stings like scorpions, and their power to hurt people for 5 months is in their tails. They have as king over them the angel of the bottomless pit. His name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek he is called Apollyon, right? So they weren't supposed to kill anyone. These things, right? So according to IUIC, these locusts were actual World War II planes. So if we're gonna go with this interpretation, that means these planes didn't kill anybody. But when we look at Royal Air Force commands at the CWGC data, this is about 90% accounted for the cause of death, the cause of RAF deaths in WW2. Back in October 29, we've reached a milestone of 100,000 airmen accounted for in terms of cause of death. It has been 6 months since then, and we now hit a major milestone of 90% accounted for. That's 90% of all 357 RAF and Commonwealth Air Force airmen who died in the Second World War have a cause of death identified. So out of the 110,130 records that are accounted for, 98,554 are related to aircraft incidents, and 11,578 are non-aviation deaths. So the locusts died in battle. The locusts didn't die in battle. They're the ones that caused the torment. But if the locusts are World War II planes, well, they died. A lot of them died. At least 98,000. So that don't make any sense. Where in the text does it say that the locusts died? No, the locusts were causing torment for 5 months. But if these things were actual World War II planes, well, the guys that were flying these planes, 98,000 of them died. So even if you want to go with this interpretation, it completely clashes with scripture. Okay? So now, IUIC are not the originators of this form of interpreting Revelation. We're going to look at this book entitled Revelation and the End of All Things by Craig R. Koester. He says, to make sense of these apparently chaotic events, some turn to the 7 trumpet visions in Revelation 8 through 11. In these chapters, a series of horrific plagues devastate the earth. Yet for futuristic interpreters, the definite sequencing shows that everything is unfolding just as God intends. For example, Trumpet 5, the smoke from the abyss, signifies the oil fires in Kuwait after the Gulf War of 1991. The locusts with iron breastplates, human faces, and tails that sting are, wait for it, helicopters that shoot missiles. Right? Recent scholarly study interprets Revelation very differently from the futuristic approaches described above. A good way to show the difference is to look at the way that the book introduces itself. Futuristic interpreters tend to read Revelation as if it began John to the Christians of North America who lived in the 21st century, assuming that Revelation is primarily a book for those living at the end of time. Most scholars today, however, note that Revelation begins John to the 7 churches that are in Asia. To take the statement literally means that Revelation is a book for its own time and that it was written to communicate with Christian congregations in the 1st century Asia Minor, modern day Turkey. Right? We're always talking about context here, right? Context is king, it matters, right? And of course, there's various forms of context. But what's the context of Revelation? Well, it's a series of visions that Christ gives to John, the Revelator, to write down to give to these churches in modern day Turkey. So these things were understood by them. It was communicated, the symbols and everything was for them, not for us. Now, in the sense of John Walton says that he says that the Bible is written for us, but not to us, right? So a lot of times we're eavesdropping in other people's conversations, right? And we have to understand the context of what they understand, right? The majority of the Bible is written in what's known as high context, meaning that the writer and the audience, they already have an understanding of certain terms and phrases and idioms. So they're not going to explain themselves to the audience because they know that the audience catches their drift. I always like using the example of, if I tell somebody, yo, money grip, let's scrape off to the iron horse and bounce over the CI. Right? These are all English words, right? But you have to be from a certain place, this case, Brooklyn, right? And it had to be in Brooklyn at a certain time, right? So if you lived in Brooklyn, specifically South Brooklyn, because different parts of Brooklyn had different slang too. So if you lived in South Brooklyn in the 80s, what I just said is, hello, my friend, let us take the train to go to Coney Island. That's what I just said, right? But I'm not going to explain to Money Grip from the 1980s because he gets the slang. He knows exactly what I mean. There's no need for me to explain anything. But 100 years from now, if someone was to read that, they're like, yo, they had iron horses in Brooklyn? Wow. I thought they had cars. They went, that's interesting. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, you have to understand the time and the place where these things were being said in order not to misinterpret. And unfortunately, with IUIC and with some Christians, we like to read things into the text. We can't do that. For us to understand Revelation as much as we can, we have to understand it from the perspective of these churches. What did they understand at that time? What were some of the symbols that they were accustomed to being, shown? What idioms, what slang was being used at that time? Okay. So let's continue. If futuristic interpreters assume that Revelation's message will become clearer as the final days approach, most scholars take the opposite view, assuming that Revelation's message would have been clearest to those who lived in John's own time. They search for clues to understand the book, not by combing recent headlines or news broadcasts, but by studying the language and literature of the ancient world. If you want to understand what they were comprehending, you got to put yourself in the mind of a person who lived at that place and time. If you want to understand how things were going down in the Old Testament, you're going to have to become familiar with the ancient Near East. You're going to have to know a little bit about Mesopotamia and Egypt and Babylon and Assyria, right? If you want to have a better understanding of what's going on in the New Testament, you're going to have to learn a little bit about the Greco-Roman world, the culture, the government, right? So that you can catch the punchlines because they're not going to explain it to you because they're talking to an audience that already knows what they mean. Knowing something about apocalyptic literature helps readers of Revelation check the kind of expectations that they bring to the book. First, readers today sometimes are intrigued with Revelation because it seems to be a uniquely mysterious writing in comparison to other biblical books. Readers in John's own time, however, would have recognized that Revelation was written in an established literary form that had features in common with other texts. Revelation wasn't strange to them. This is something that they're used to. This is a form of a communication that they were accustomed to reading and hearing of. It wasn't bugged out for them, even though it might be for us. The judgment depicted here is not direct divine punishment, but a revelation of what it would mean for God to hand over the world to other powers. The horde of locusts that emerges from the hellish smoke is a plague reminiscent of the locusts that fell upon the Egyptians before the Exodus, and of the locusts that the prophet Joel took as a portent of the day of the Lord's judgment. Again, these people, they know the Old Testament. So when they get the story of these visions from John and they start reading, and it's like these locusts, it's like, oh, wait a minute. Where have we heard this before? Yeah, there was this plague in Egypt. And the prophet Joel talked about it too in the day of the Lord's judgment. They know what it means. Locusts, this motif hasn't been uniquely scripted only in this book. It's a symbol that's been used throughout the Old Testament. They're accustomed to understanding what locusts mean. Right? This is from the Theology of the Book of Revelation by Richard Bauckham. He says, consider, for example, the descriptions of the plagues of the 7 trumpets and the 7 bowls. These from highly schematized, I'm just butchered that, literary pattern, which itself conveys meaning. Their content suggests, among many other things, the plagues of Egypt, which accompanied the Exodus, the fall of Jericho to the army of Joshua, the army of locusts depicted in the prophecy of Joel, the Sinai theophany, the contemporary fear of invasion by Parthian cavalry, the earthquakes to which the cities of Asia Minor were rather frequently subject, and the very possibility of the eruption of Vesuvius, which had recently terrified the Mediterranean world. Again, when the initial audience saw and read about this vision of locusts, they would quickly go back to Exodus and the prophet Joel, because these were massive times of upheaval and chaos and destruction and punishment. Right? So when they read that, it's like they know what that means. Because again, this is a symbol that they're accustomed to hearing and reading about. John has taken some of his contemporaries' worst experiences and worst fears of wars and natural disasters, blown them up to apocalyptic proportions, and cast them in biblically elusive terms. The point is not to predict a sequence of events. The point is to evoke and to explore the meaning of the divine judgment which is impending on the sinful world. This is what they get. This is what they understand. All right, now we're going to look at the New International Greek Testament commentary on the book of Revelation by G.K. Bill. It says, deep smoke arises from the abyss when the angel opens it. The smoke darkens both the sun and the air, darkening of the sun and other parts of the cosmos, has already been seen to connote judgment. The image is an allusion to the repeated expression, the sun will be darkened, in Joel chapter 2, verse 10, verse 31, chapter 3, 15, and Isaiah 13, 10, where it is a sign of judgment, partly included in Exodus 10, 15, where there were so many locusts that the land was darkened. Exodus 10, 15 and verse 15 says that the sun was also darkened. Joel's imagery is itself probably a development of Exodus 10, 1 to 15. So again, this is a pattern. The idea of locusts coming and ravaging things and the sky darkening. They've seen this before, right? They've seen this in the Exodus account. And Joel, he knew his scriptures too. So he's using it to an audience that understands the Exodus as well back then. So this is a recurring thing. John wasn't surprised when he saw this vision of locusts. The 7 churches in Asia were not, they didn't misunderstand what was being told to them. They understood the symbolism. John wasn't grasping for understanding. We are, because we're not from those times. The harmful nature of the judgment in Revelation 9:3 is also expressed by the description of the beings here as locusts going out into the earth. They are destructive as a swarm of locusts devouring all vegetation in their path. The wording of this expression is based in Exodus 10:12. Let the locusts come up on the land slash earth, which introduces the locust plague against Egypt. Therefore, the fifth trumpet is partly modeled literally and thematically on the Exodus plagues, as were the preceding trumpets. Again, these ideas and emblems and motifs are very, very well documented in the Hebrew Bible. So if you know your Hebrew Bible and you've seen these things told, or you're reading these things, your brain is going to these different parts of the Bible, to the Tanakh and Torah. Okay. The locusts in Exodus 10:15 destroyed the land and devoured the vegetation and all the fruit of the trees. And there was no green thing left on the trees. But the locusts here are commissioned not to harm the grass of the earth or any green thing or any tree. They are to harm only unbelievers. Those who did not have the seal of God on their foreheads, but have the mark of the beast on their forehead. Right? So they flipped it. Right? It's like, okay, because usually when we see the locusts, it's devouring the crops. Right? But now it's like, no, leave the earth alone. Get these unbelievers, torment them. Again, they understand this, right? They wasn't looking at things and was trying to figure out what are these things. They understood what they saw, and they also, more importantly, understood what it symbolized. All right. Now, here's the kicker when it comes to IUIC, right? Deuteronomy 28 also predicts that in latter days, Israel will suffer the plagues of Egypt, including the plague of locusts. Because of idolatry, this later day affliction includes plagues of madness, insanity, bewilderment of heart, and groping at noon as the blind man gropes in darkness, being driven mad, trembling heart, despair of soul. Their life will hang in doubt, and they will have dread of heart. See, this is the funny part of the whole thing. IUIC and many One West denominations constantly go to Deuteronomy 28 to explain who they are. They know who they are because of the curses, right? That, what other people have suffered all these curses? Well, one of the curses was what? Locusts. Because why? Because that was one of the plagues in Egypt. If you break the covenant in Mount Sinai, if you breach this contract, which you had to make an oath, by the way, to incur the curses to begin with, but if you break the contract that you pledged to, one of the penalties was that you will suffer the plagues of Egypt. So he's trying to think it's it's helicopters. No, it's the plagues. It's Deuteronomy 28. It's the curses, right? If anyone should know about the plagues of Egypt, it should be IUIC. It should be the One Westers, the GMSs, and the ISUBKs, right? Because they love Deuteronomy 28. So it's locust dead, but it's not locust in Revelation, right? That's the ironic thing. It's like, you guys know that locust is a thing. It's a motif. It's things that happen throughout the Bible, right? And these 7 churches knew their Bible. I'm sure they've come across, the scrolls of Deuteronomy. So again, when John conveys this revelation to them, and they see about these locusts, their minds are going Exodus, Joel, Deuteronomy 28. It's all popping up in their memory because of what they've read. It has nothing to do with World War I or II airplanes. It has everything to do with what they understood from reading the Bible. Okay. Revelation 9:6. explains the torment of verse 5 in a similar psychological manner. Just as the time of torment in Revelation 9:5 is limited, so Wisdom 16:5 asserts that Israel's suffering in the wilderness endured not forever. The parallels with wisdom in Deuteronomy show that the Egyptian plagues are still in the background of Revelation 9:4-6. As much as IUIC loves to quote Deuteronomy, you would think that if there's anybody that would catch this understanding in Revelation, you would think it would be them. When they see locusts, they should have been like, yo, that's the curses. If anything, right? If they were smart, they would use this as a proof text to say, well, you see, that the 7 churches of Asia, they had to be Hebrews. Because look how John is, look how Jesus is explaining what's going to happen. He's explaining them by using Deuteronomy. And who, you know what I mean? Like, that's the way they should flip it. They'll still be wrong. But that would make more sense, right? That would make more sense. But no, it's World War I and II somehow. Somehow, right? The 5th trumpet causes, so this is from Revelation 6:16, David E. Ayun. The 5th trumpet causes a star to fall from heaven to earth, possibly Satan, probably an angelic messenger. This star releases from the bottomless pit plague of locusts who harm only those lacking God's seal. The 8th plague of locusts in Exodus 10:4-20. No counterpart in Revelation 15:16. This locust plague, one of several terrible ordeals that people in the Eastern Mediterranean could experience, is clearly modeled after Joel 2:1-14. Note the common motifs of the trumpet call, the comparison to an enormous army, the destruction of everything in their path, right? Since the angel of the abyss is their king, this must be an army of demons. Okay, so this is what we see here. In a gross misunderstanding of Revelation. They did not take time out to try to understand what they were reading based on the understanding of the original audience. And every time you don't do that, you take a chance in misinterpreting scripture. Because if you know your Hebrew Bible, the way these 7 churches did, they were not confused. When John saw this vision, John wasn't confused. Nowhere in the passage was he like, I'm bewildered by these sights. It kind of looks like this. He doesn't do any of that. He knows exactly what he sees. And when he saw it, he probably was thinking, oh man, this is Exodus 10. This is Joel. This is Deuteronomy 28. I know what this is. And so did the 7 churches. But you know who don't know? IUIC. People who profess to be Hebrews. You would think that people who are out here every day trying to persuade people to believe that they are Hebrew Israelites, you would think that they would be very well acquainted with Hebrew symbolism. But nah. It's World War II. It's World War I. It's fighter planes and helicopters. It's not Tanakh and Torah. Make it make sense. All right. So I just want to share that with you guys. And once again, context is everything. If you truly want to understand any passage of scripture, there's various contexts you have to be aware of. There's the immediate context of what you just read. It's the context between that passage in context of that chapter, in context of that book. Also, what time What culture is this passage being embedded in? You know, who's this being written to? How would they understand? Like, all these things have to be taken into account if you're going to properly exegete not just the Bible, but any historical document. And time again, IUIC has no time to do such things. The Bible is no more than a prop to try to convey their agenda. They are not concerned about properly reading the text in its proper context. It could care less. We're going to use this and any other book, and we're going to twist it, turn it, bounce it, and flip it, and make it do what we wanted to do for our agenda. Not caring about the integrity and truth that is in Scripture. So please do not be confounded by these people, right? They mishandling, misapplying, misunderstanding, mistakes on Scripture time and time again. They're not taking time out to understand the very Bible that they claim to follow. So do not get caught up with the aesthetics, with the purple and gold and the slick videos and, you know, the rap songs, which some of them kind of slap. I'm not going to hold you. Production's pretty decent. Message off. But it's all about the aesthetics. It's the Greek chorus, right? Every Sabbath when they're in the corner. That's right. Bring it out. It's very captivating until you actually pause and listen to what they're actually teaching. If you take away the pomp and circumstance, if you take away the smokes and mirrors, and actually hear what they believe, chances are you won't get caught up. All right? And remind that to your friends. Because, you know, we might have people who are being tempted or are already in these kind of organizations. Just take time out and slowly read what these guys are quoting, but put it back in its proper context and watch their doctrine fall like a house of cards. Okay, so with that being said, this is BK, and the BK stands for Brooklyn, just in case everybody forgot. BK Apologist, signing off. Hey.